All right, so let's get started on our geo model. So first thing we need to do is geolocate our site. For this task, I typically would just open up my Google toolbar. You can just right click on any tool and then check on the Google toolbar. If you're on a Mac, you'll need to go to the View drop-down and choose Tool Palettes, and there's an option there to open your Google toolbar. So I'll just click on that, and then that's going to launch this Maps interface, and we're going to be able to type in an address here. So I'm just going to type in Bruce Randolph and Elizabeth Street, comma, Denver. So those are the cross streets of where we're going to propose this gastropub in Denver. And so here's our site. You can see that we're already all the way zoomed in. And in order to geolocate this, to grab this site, I'll click on Select Region. And you could drag your pins around. I'm going to grab plenty of the context in the area. It's all free, so you might as well go for it. But this is the building that we're working on. So I'll click on Grab, and that's going to import a 1-to-1 real-world scale image of the site. So what's slick about this is right away, within just a few seconds, I can then take my tape measure tool and start measuring and realize it's like 30 feet deep, 30 feet wide. Let's see, overall dimensions are like 50. So you just get a really good sense of what's going on with that building here. So what we'll do now is we're going to trace the footprint of the building. To do that, I would typically use my rectangle tool. So I activate my rectangle tool, click once to start, move my cursor around. Now, before I go too much further, check out what's happening. See, my dimensions are down to 33 feet, or it's down to 31/64. That's kind of a pretty, I wouldn't say sloppy, but it's just, we're sketching this model. So we can just keep our dimensions clean by going to Window, Model Info, Units. And we can enable length snapping. And I'm going to knock that down to, we'll just say down to maybe 3 inches. So we'll do that. And then tab out of that and say we're good to go. Close that window. So now when I'm measuring, check that out. My dimensions are much cleaner. So, if you're sketching something, working on kind of like a throwaway model, this is a much better way to trace, because you'll at least end up with some relatively clean dimensions. Now, as I'm tracing this, notice that this stuff kind of gets that Z fighting happening. So what I'll do now is go to View, Face Style, and turn on my X-ray mode. You can see I've got a keyboard shortcut for that too, F8. When I'm in X-ray mode, it just kind of takes away that flickering. So it's a little bit easier for me to trace this site with that on like that. Okay, so I'm going to keep in mind here, I'm a little bit more familiar with this building because I went and took pictures of it, but I see that roof overhang, and I'm aware that when I look at that, that wall is in line with this wall. So we're just going to trace off of that. And furthermore, if I just kind of go around the building, I think I've got the option to see, the back of the building is kind of in line too. So we're just going to make those assumptions. This one's just lower, that's why it looks a little bit different. So we'll just encourage our inference. There we go. And I'm going to pull this one up real high and pull this one up just a little bit. Now, what I typically do here is I do exaggerate. I don't want to kind of get it real close. Just for demonstration purposes, because when we scale up our photograph, you'll see it makes it a little bit clearer if you just exaggerate the height, because what's accurate on this are the verticals. Where these vertical lines are, that's going to be accurate. The height we don't have yet, though. We're just guessing on that. So a critical first step of any match photo operation is putting your axes at the front bottom corner of the model. So we're going to put the axes here because the photograph that we're going to use is, let's go back to, I think it ends in 51. So not that one. I think this one's going to be good. This one gets us that nice, clean corner perspective. We can see plenty of parallel elements on the building here and here. So we're going to drop our axes right at the bottom, the front bottom corner of the building. So that's the image we're going to use. So if I go back into SketchUp, I need to put my axes right here. To do that, I can go to Tools, Axes, or I can just click on my my button there. So usually when I place my axes, I just click 3 times. I just go 1, 2, 3, and that's going to drop the origin back in there. All right, so now I can go to View, face style, turn off my X-ray. That's all good. And I'm going to position myself in the model kind of in a similar view of where I was when I took that photograph. So this is just kind of a nice corner perspective in SketchUp. And now I'll go to Camera, Match New Photo. All right, so then we're going to navigate to that one that ended in 21, which would be, looks like this was our match photo image. All right, so we've selected the photo. We'll say Open. All right, so now this is where things get a little bit messy, right? So the match photo dialog should open up automatically. And one thing you can do to kind of clean things up is uncheck model. All that's going to do is turn off the geometry for your model. So now we're looking at something a little bit more manageable. This is just the photograph, and think of it like back in Architecture Studio. And maybe you took a photograph and blew it up on the copy machine and then tape it to your desk, and you need to trace parallel elements in order to project your vanishing points. Well, this is your photograph taped to your digital drafting table here, and now these are your digital T-squares. We're going to use these to trace parallel elements on the building. Keep in mind that it's usually best to keep these as far away from each other as possible. And the more you zoom in and get accurate with these, just the cleaner your model is going to be. So it's okay to overlap them. That's no problem. And let's see, put this down here. So I kind of just do the broad strokes first. And then we're going to zoom in and really dial in these axes bars. So the origin right here, this needs to be placed at the same front bottom corner in basically on that photograph now. So we assign the origin to the front bottom corner of our model, and now we place that at the front bottom corner of our picture, of the building in our picture. All right, so that's looking pretty good. When you do that, everything should start to kind of come into focus here, like you know, the perspective starts to get matched and your vanishing points will start to be more accurate. All right, so I'm going to zoom in a bit and just say like, all right, this one looks pretty decent. Get that kind of matched up. And I'm pushing down on the scroll wheel button to pan when I'm in this match photo mode. You can see up here in the top left corner, it tells me I'm in match photo. Let's see, we'll kind of zoom in over here, just tighten that one up a little bit. And this one. So you can be as accurate as, or as loose as you want, but I'd say we get within a foot or two. You're not going to want to build off of these models, but certainly for a design study, this is the way to go. It requires no measuring. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's turn our model back on. So I just go back to my match photo dialog, turn the model on. Now, remember I was saying that the verticals are what is accurate. The height is not. So there's a common tendency to want to hover on this axis, the blue axis, and click and drag and scale it down until the building height matches. That is not what is correct. We exaggerated that. We made it really tall. So what we need to do is zoom it until the verticals line up with our photograph. And you can see that that's doing pretty good here and doing all right here, I suppose, and actually really clean there. So, the further back into the background of your picture you go, the less accurate it's going to be. The foreground is going to be more accurate. So in this case, I would be more focused on like this wall and getting that to all sync up rather than really being all hung up on this because it's really just a sketch. All right, so that looks pretty good, so I can say done. I'm going to orbit back into 3D, and now we're going to set the building heights. So I can go to my push-pull tool, and I'm going to click one time on the roof here. And then I go back up and click on this match photo scene, and now I can position that building. And remember, we're snapping to 3 inches, so that looks pretty good right there. I'll orbit around into 3D, click on this one, click on my match photo scene, and now I can kind of zoom around and say like, yep, that looks pretty good right there. Cool. All right, so now we've got our building mass kind of set up, or we're getting there. So let's see, the next thing we want to do, I might even adjust this. It looks to me like I'm just going to pull this wall back. So I'll click once here, click on my match photo tab, zoom in, and set that there. And then let's see, we're going to use our line tool, kind of draw straight out on the green, straight down, like this on the green. And then I'll just be very meticulous about staying on axis. So you can see there, I kind of drew that form, but I was being very careful about which axis I was actually drawing on, because once you come off axis, then it's when you're drawing in this match photo mode, you really got to pay attention, because it's a 3D world kind of flattened onto this 2D photograph, and you have the ability to draw on any axis. So that's where you use the up and the arrow keys on the keyboard, or you can hold Shift to kind of lock that up. So, all right, so we've got this. As I go through here, usually I would just kind of clean things up. I'll leave that line for now, because what we're going to do is run this profile around our building, because that's the way that's the way that roof form is created. So with my select tool, I'm going to pre-select my path. Got that? So once my path is pre-selected, I click on my Follow Me tool, and then I click on my profile, just like that. So I've got that piece running around, and I can use my eraser tool and clean that up. So it's good to keep a really clean model. I think as you're going through, you just use the eraser tool and kind of trim things up. So we've got the general form of the building created, and if I go back to my match photo scene, all I need to do is click on Project Textures from Photo. What that does, we can trim those, that's fine. What that does is it throws that photograph onto that building. So check that out. That's a pretty nice, clean setup there for a match photo or a photo textured model. So what we're doing is we're just kind of getting the broad strokes down before we move this into a render-ready model and really tighten it up. So as far as texturing this whole thing, what you can do is we can just take our paint bucket tool, and we can sample. So I hold down Alt on a PC, or you can go click on this eyedropper. I'm going to sample my Google Earth snapshot and then apply that to the roof. So that'll kind of at least make it look right. And then I think what we want to do is maybe set up another match photo over on this side, because that's really the advanced feature of, or advanced use of match photos, when you get several of them lined up. And it's kind of easy to do one, but it gets tricky when you're doing a second one. So let's do that. Let's go back to our photos, and I guess the reason we're doing this is because we really want to we just want to keep the details in the foreground. So like this side of the building did not make it it was kind of in the background on the match photo picture that we used. So I think this one, it ends in 5152. This is the one we'll use to set up this these textures. So that looks pretty decent. Let's use that. So again, I'm going to just kind of plot this line over here. I'm going to put my axes at the front bottom corner of the building, and then we're going to set up our match photo the same way we did. So I'll go back into SketchUp, go to my axes toolbar, and reset my axes at that front bottom corner. So there they are. I position myself in a view that's similar to that photograph that I'm using for my match photo, and then I go to Camera and choose Match New Photo. Now, what I say, 5121. Let's scroll down, and where is that? So 5111. So we'll just include all of these photos for you guys, or I'm sorry, 5152, that's this one. Okay, so this is our new match photo. I'll just click on Open, and then you run through the exact same process. So if you, we'll leave the model on just for a moment and check out what happens. See, I need to put that at the front bottom corner of my building. So you can see how that model is moving around, and then you kind of scale it using these using the click and drag on the axes. It's not exactly scaling, it's zooming the photo. You're not affecting the geometry, you're just affecting the relationship between the photo, basically the size of the photo and the model. But what it looks like is you're scaling, but it's really just adjusting that. Alright, so I'll go to my match photo dialog, turn off my model because I think it makes it just easier to work on, and then I'll click and drag here and click and drag there. This one I'm probably not going to be quite as concerned about making this super accurate. Let's see, I can use parallel elements. I need to track down this edge here, and this edge. That looks pretty decent. We want to kind of steer clear of using the ground plane because the ground plane tends to undulate, whereas like a course of brick, they were probably setting that to be pretty level and parallel. So parallel elements on the building, we've got them all kind of lined up. Let's see how that makes our model. And then if I kind of zoom that a little bit, and again, I am more concerned about the foreground than the background. All right, so that looks pretty good. We'll just say done. Now, I probably don't need to project all of these textures. I think what I'll do is draw a line right here. And just for now, we're going to project only these textures here, like that, because those are kind of blurry and distorted. So I pre-select those surfaces, and then I go back to my match photo. So they're pre-selected. And when I click on Project Textures from Photo, I'm going to overwrite those existing textures. And now I've kind of used higher res imagery on this chunk, and this one remained as the higher res from the other image. So that's looking pretty decent. All right, so then those are a couple techniques on how to get the broad strokes down. I mean, I could go back here and we'll project that one too. Trimming the partially visible faces, what that means is it's going to draw a line right along here on this surface that I selected. So I'll say yes, and then check it out. If I unhide everything, you can see that it drew that line because it was kind of helping to, if it would have projected everything, it would have looked like that. I would have had this surface on that building. So no big deal. Let's I'm going to trim that out. And actually, the way that I would work on a piece like that, where I don't have a good shot of it, is I'd probably just come in here and just draw a rectangle around a nice chunk of brick, and I would right click on it and choose Make Unique Texture, and then I would sample that. So I go over here to my paint bucket tool, click on this, and now I'm just going to paint that brick on there, and then I probably just paint that brick back here too. So that way it just looks right. It's not critical that these models are perfect. The PhotoTextured models especially, I mean those, I can just trim that out. Really, all we're going for here is we just want an accurate representation and accurate massing, and now what we can do is go in and develop the render-ready model. So we're going to trace these things out and build out this building using groups and components and 3D surfaces and much cleaner textures. So I would say that, depending on what your purpose is for building this model, that's going to determine the level of detail. I can hold control, swipe that, trim that up. So really, for our purposes here today, this is a great existing conditions photo-textured model. It's built using, we kind of trimmed down our tolerances or did our snapping to the 3-inch intervals. So now we've got kind of pretty clean dimensions. So that kind of helps. And I think we're ready for the next step. So check out the next tutorial where we're going to take this model and develop it into what we call a render-ready model of the existing conditions.